Vanessa and Duncan, thank you very much for joining me. It's nice to see you both.
Good to
Good
be
to
here.
see you too, Chris.
Duncan, I'll start with you with the government's fast-track announcements late last week. Some would say these are basically a step in the right direction because Labor was so slow with getting anything done. And I want to start with the very Christchurch issues, for example, the Otakaro Avon River network that's been given some cash. It's been told, get on with it and do it. That surely is a good thing, right?
Well, look, I love that project, and I want to see it happen. And really excited to see it go forward. We did have a fast track program. The difference with ours was it didn't have kind of the ministers holding the pen on it. It went through a consenting process with commissioners. I'm really concerned about some of the projects. I'm concerned that Philip Carter's putting thousands of houses in Rangiora and around Rolleston and Lincoln, and he's a donor of a significant sum, around $60,000 to the National Party. Now, when the ministers have the sign-off on those decisions, my concern is that they're making those decisions on the wrong basis, with the wrong influences.
Vanessa, Duncan makes a point that was surprising that got fast-tracked, considering apparently the majority of the locals didn't want it, an independent hearings panels declined it, and all of a sudden it comes along and it gets the green light, and of course the Carters are happy. What do you say?
Well, the processes behind that, as I understand it, have been well managed. I don't have any problem with that. We really need housing. We've got a housing crisis in this country. We need to be able to get things done and get people housed, because it's not okay to have people in emergency housing. So we need to be able to get on and get those things done.
But emergency housing versus subdivisions is hardly the same thing.
Oh, it's the same market. If we've got a tight residential property market, then we haven't got enough available for rentals. And that's the reality of it, is that it's all one big market. It's not just, segmented off. So if we've got parts of the housing market that are difficult because we're not getting places built and we're not getting enough for the people who are coming into the country and for the people we've already got here, then it's going to really stifle our ability to grow in this country.
Duncan, that a fair point?
Just quietly, that's absolute rubbish. The commissioners looked at housing need in respect of both of those projects. There is no housing crunch in Rolleston or in Rangiora. The fact of the matter is there's more than enough housing. Christchurch City has had the lower rents than most of the country because we've got a good housing supply. If there's housing needs, it's in Auckland in particular and other places like Tauranga. So, and look, let's be clear. This is Philip Carter, uncle to Matt Ducey, brother to David Carter, closely connected in with the political community and a political donor. So the process around this, the lack of independence, absolutely stinks.
Vanessa, I'll give you the final chance to...
Well, the thing is that all of these fast tracks have to go through a final expert panel. So it's not that the ministers have final sign-off, and we had really good feedback about that. So the expert panel will be the ones that get to the final position on this.
Now, that's inaccurate. The ministers still have final sign-off ultimately on this. The panel can be overruled by ministers. So get your facts right if you're going to have a crappy piece of legislation like this.
Duncan, you suggesting there's a bit of favouritism going on here. What you're saying is quite a strong allegation, saying it's all a bit too cosy.
Well, I think that's right. I would stand by that framing of it. It's a bit too cosy. I'm not saying anyone's acting dishonestly, but Radio New Zealand's done a great job pointing out that $500,000 in donations were made by people who will benefit from these fast-track projects. That's deeply concerning. That's not the kind of country I want to live in, where people who make donations find themselves all of a sudden on a list to circumvent normal procedures which protect communities and protect the environment.
Vanessa, did you want to respond?
Well, I think that there's a bit of this is a small country, and the fact that we have got some people who are wealthy and are doing developments, I think that's probably a coincidence, actually, because there's more people on this list than just those that have made donations. I think that's an outrageous allegation from Duncan, and I'd stand by that. The processes that we've employed through Cabinet have been absolutely rock solid.
I need to move on.
Facts.
I need to move
Facts.
on. No buses. This is probably your patch too, Vanessa. No buses for the cruise passengers. ECAN said there's no money, despite increasing the rates. You've got locals who don't want it anyway. Phil Major said to me though, there's a 20% reduction in the number of cruise ships heading to Littleton. So, I mean, do we even need to bother getting too exercised about this in the first place? What do you say?
Well, I think that there's two sides to this. The first thing is the experience of the locals, and then also how we balance that for businesses. The experience for locals was quite difficult when everything first came back, and it was a little bit chaotic mornings. What I think ECAN have said is that actually they'll be able to prioritise their buses and maybe move some of them around a little bit. Some of the scheduling can change a little bit, as I understand. It may actually help reduce the load and make it easier for locals as well. It is disappointing, I know, for the community though, because it did work very well. But there was the feedback from ECAN was that it was some of those services were a little bit underutilised. So I think there's room to to improve and make it better. And I hope that they can find somewhere in the middle, because the businesses in Littleton that benefit from those also want to see people being able to, walk through the town and do all of those sort of things, but not be overwhelmed.
Duncan, I mean, with 20% fewer passengers coming through this season, is this just a bit of a storm in a teacup, or do we really need to start reconsidering what ECAN's decided not to fund?
Well, I think it would have been. I kind of think it's a bit ghoulish not to fund these buses, and it's not just that there's 20% less, but when one of these big cruise ships arrives, the whole place can get somewhat overwhelmed. And the buses are really good to kind of move the people around, even out the flow, spread the customers between Littleton and town. And it doesn't seem too much to ask. And it's really for the Littleton community, so that their buses don't get overwhelmed, and so that they don't simply have this mass of people sort of milling around and, stealing their lattes.
That would be bad, wouldn't it? Food trucks drama earlier this week. You've had, or maybe last week now, you've got the Central City Business Association packing a sad, acting like the mafia, because the Arts Centre says we're going to do food trucks because we're being told to be more sustainable and to try and get an income. And then, Duncan, the president, or whatever she calls herself, admits she didn't even bother to speak to the Arts Centre in the first place. I thought that was a bit off, really. What do you say?
Oh, look, anyone who's outraged at, consenting processes because they're competitors, I kind of look sideways at. The fact of the matter is that, Riverside, those food outlets, fantastic place, fantastic food outlets. I go down there regularly. But what they want is a monopoly on, good food in the central city. I don't actually think they're in competition. It's actually a quite different experience. The food trucks down at the Arts Centre would be great. There's a consenting process. It has to be done right. I get that. I think there's room for 1,000 food trucks to bloom in the Christchurch. And isn't it great that Wellington's complaining that they haven't got the kind of food culture we have, and we're arguing over how many outlets we should have. What a great problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. Vanessa, what do you say? I mean, I've been to the Arts Centre since I was a kid, and food trucks always seem to be the main thing. I mean, Philip Aldridge said to me earlier this week that they were looking at about 25 food trucks. I hardly think it's going to be competition against Riverside. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, fantastic that they're doing it. It's a great venue. It's a great opportunity. I think the more choices for people and customers, the better. And competition is a good thing. So even if it was being competitive, that changes the behaviour of businesses. It makes them, think about their service. It makes them improve things. Competition in business keeps things thriving.
I mean, are we going to moan every time a new restaurant opens up because, it may have been, I was going to say fast track, but probably wouldn't be the right word. Guys, before we end this, Mental Health Day, World Mental Health Day was yesterday. And I wanted to sort of ask you both personally, what do you guys do to keep your mental health in check? Because I know when you are a public figure, or you put yourself up there, particularly as a politician these days, it comes with incredible risks, not just the open criticism, but all types of issues, as we've explored in the past 12 months with various politicians coming out saying they experienced mental health issues. Duncan, I'll start with you. What do you do? What's your tip seriously, for feeling
Yeah,
okay
no,
in this
I think,
mad world.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. And probably two things. One, desperately need to get outdoors sometimes, being shut inside, Parliament's terrible, just getting out. So even in Parliament, I'll often try and just take a walk, get some fresh air, get the lungs and the legs moving. But out into the wide open spaces is my true happy place, up in the mountains or out on the water. But the second thing is just, family, just being around, sometimes you don't talk, you're just in the same place having a cup of tea and reading the paper, but just being around people who you're really comfortable with and who you love. I think that's a really important point as well.
Nicely said. Vanessa, what about you?
Yeah, well, similar actually. I try to do some exercise. I don't do anything too vigorous, but walk up in the hills and doing a bit of gardening. Connecting with family and friends is really important. And also, I do some art. So I do watercolours and abstracts and just mess around with paint and enjoy making a mess and making something beautiful sometimes.
And just quickly, I think Vanessa might have a piece on an exhibition at the Arts Centre at the moment. Is that correct, Vanessa?
I did, thank you, Duncan, but I think it's finished now. Actually, it was the Art and Recovery program that the NZDF runs, and so as a veteran, I had a few pieces up in there. Did you see it, Duncan? It was a good exhibition.
But I'm sorry to hear that it's finished. I would have liked to get along.
Well, there's always time to put out another exhibition. I'll come have a look. Vanessa and Duncan, thank you very much for the spirited conversation and have a great weekend.
See you later.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.